Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to talk about the appearances of Christ to the temples. One in the Americas, one in Jerusalem, right? Now, I've come across a couple of interesting things, some possibilities to think about. First, we're going to talk about something that was said in this general conference. What I'm looking at here, this is on archive.org. 68th Annual Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, held in the Tabernacle, Salt Lake City, April 6th, 7th, 8th, and 10th of 1898. Okay, and then we're going to revisit this idea of Melchizedek's Temple. If you didn't see this video, I did it a few days ago. It was really fascinating. They really do think that they found the temple that Melchizedek used. And there's kind of a lot to it. But I'm going to be exploring a different aspect of it in this video later on. So first, I got this email from Mama Zion. And she says, apparently Joseph Smith said that Jesus would come when we were living in the Rocky Mountains, further confirming that the temple is the New Jerusalem and the center place, while probably will still be built as a monument, will be following this coming to the saints in America, Rocky Mountains. Okay, so she sent me this link, which goes to Joseph Smith Foundation, and again, me and Troy are going to be talking to Hannah from Joseph Smith Foundation, and that video will be out next Monday, so be looking forward to that. So let me read the direct source. Although it's good to see stuff like this, see what Joseph Smith Foundation has put together, and I would encourage you to check this out because there's a lot of really good things here. But I went to the original source for the quote that we're talking about, or what Joseph Smith said. Okay, so I'm going to skip down. All right, page 57. President Wilford Woodruff. Okay. President Wilford Woodruff, Origin of Zion's Camps, Notable Prophecy by Joseph Smith, Christ to Come to the Saints in the Mountains. All right. Let me get rid of that, zoom in just a little bit more. And this is very short. Okay, so don't worry about it. In 1833, so this is by Wilford Woodruff, okay? In 1833, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was driven out of Jackson County, Missouri, for the Word of God and testimony of Jesus Christ. There, Bishop Partridge was tarred and feathered by the mob. That was the time of the falling of the stars in that country. And that's something I need to cover. I know a lot of people have emailed me about this. There was like a really incredible event where there were a bunch of shooting stars. It was basically a meteor shower, but it was like different from just your regular meteor shower. Okay, anyway, soon afterwards, Bishop Partridge called for volunteers to go to Kirtland to see the prophet. 2 men volunteered out of those who had been driven from Jackson County. One was Parley P. Pratt, and the other was Lyman White. They went to Kirtland and laid before the prophet the circumstances, and the prophet called these 2 men and others to go aboard and gather up the strength of the Lord's house and to prepare the camp of Zion. Parley P. Pratt came to my house. I had just been baptized. I was engaged for a year in furnishing lumber for by contract. Parley P. Pratt told me it was my duty to lay aside all my temporal matters, go to Kirtland, and join Zion's camp. I obeyed his counsel. You see, this is the type of person that becomes a prophet, right? And not everyone's going to become prophet or General Relief Society president or whatever. But this is what putting God first looks like. It's just like, hey, you need to come and join Zion's camp. And you're like in the middle of work. And you're in the middle of work. You like lay that junk aside and you just do what the Lord needs you to do. Okay. I arrived in Kirtland on Saturday and there met with Joseph and Hiram Smith in the street. I was introduced to Joseph Smith. It was the first time that I had ever seen him in my life. He invited me home to spend the Sabbath with him, and I did so. They had meeting on Sunday. On Sunday night, the prophet called on all who held the priesthood to gather into the little log schoolhouse they had there. It was a small house, perhaps 14 square feet, but it held the whole of the priesthood of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who were then in the town of Kirtland, and who had gathered together to go off in Zion's camp. That was the first time I ever saw Oliver Cowdery or heard him speak. The first time I ever saw Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball and the two Pratts and Orson Hyde and many others. There were no apostles in the church then except Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery. When we got together, the prophet called upon the elders of Israel with him to bear testimony of this work. Those that going up. Those that I have named spoke, and a good many that I have not named bore their testimonies. When they got through, the prophet said, quote, "Brethren, I have been very much edified and instructed in your testimonies here tonight. But I want to say to you before the Lord that you know no more concerning the destinies of this church and kingdom than a babe upon its mother's lap. You don't comprehend it." End quote. I was rather surprised. He said, quote, "It is only a little handful of priesthood you see here tonight, but this church will fill North and South America. It will fill the world." Again, I always like to use the meeting house locator to illustrate that. It's better than looking at a temple map because this is all the meeting houses that the church has. Okay, go to this. Each red dot on this is a meeting house. And look at North and South America. They are, in fact, filled up with meeting houses. And a lot of Europe is too, and then there's starting to be more and more and more in Africa. Africa is really on the rise. Here's a bunch in Russia, Japan, Philippines, right? Go down over here. You got Australia, where people live in Australia, and then New Zealand, and then all over the Pacific, right? The Polynesians. Okay. And I know that some of you have probably already heard this. I knew about this before, but there was a detail I didn't ever realize, or I never picked out. It never stuck in my mind. Okay. Among other things, he said, quote, "It will fill the Rocky Mountains. There will be tens of thousands of Latter-day Saints who will be gathered in the Rocky Mountains. And there they will open the door for establishing of the gospel among the Lamanites, who will receive the gospel and their endowments and blessings of God. This people will go into the Rocky Mountains. They will there build up temples to the Most High. They will raise up a posterity there. And the Latter-day Saints who dwell in these mountains will stand in the flesh until the coming of the Son of Man." Now, this is the key part right here. Of course, there's going to be people in the Rocky Mountains that are going to be around to see the second coming. There's going to be people throughout the whole world, but look at this. The Son of Man will come to them while in the Rocky Mountains. Okay. So, you can interpret this a few different ways. The most obvious reading to me and to Zion Mama, or Mama Zion, I think, is that this is reference to Christ coming before the second coming, right? We've read about the four appearances. It's been published in the Ensign, Adam on Diamond, and then New Jerusalem, and then the Jews, and then to the whole world. I would assume, and it is an assumption, that he's referring to that appearance, right? We've talked about New Jerusalem and what New Jerusalem is. I'm not going to go over that again. There's a few different definitions, but Joseph Fielding Smith said I'm pretty sure it was in Doctrines of Salvation, that whenever we're talking about New Jerusalem, we're talking about the church. There is going to be a center place. There absolutely will be. There will be a center place. And to the best of my knowledge, it is going to be in Jackson County, Missouri. Why? It's because of this. I'm going to go over this again. Okay. So, in fact, let me zoom in. I'm not going to read all the many references that I've compiled referring to the fact that Jackson County is still going to be the center place. But I feel like probably the most telling of them all is that which is currently on the church website under gospel topics. Okay? I'm just going to go straight there. When you go to, you see this here, gospel topics, and you have all these different things. You can look at controversial things like the A word right here, addiction, adoption, adversity, creation, covenant, da 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 da. You go down to Zion. Okay, it's the only entry in for Z is Zion, and this is what it says. It says so it has a few different meanings. It can refer to the city of Enoch, it can refer to the ancient city of Jerusalem, but then it says here, the new Jerusalem, which will be built in Jackson County, Missouri. Okay? This is current, this is active, this is like, if you're somebody in the church, like especially if you're new and you're like wanting to like look at all these different things, unwed pregnancy, Urim and Thummim, vicarious work, women in the church, all these things. These are all updated things. And it's saying that New Jerusalem will be built in Jackson County. And of course, that's referring to the center place because, again, New Jerusalem is the whole church. It's also, my cat's getting in the way here. It's also North and South America. And then the center place, the actual center, what you would think of as an actual city, the capital city, will be in Jackson County, Missouri. Okay. And this is reinforced time and time and time again. I'm scrolling through all the things that I believe that is definitely the case. Okay. I'm always very hesitant to put anything in stone because the Lord could change things if he wanted to, but it seems like right now there's a pretty solid case that Jackson County, Independence, Missouri, is still the center place. Although the headquarters of the church is currently in Salt Lake City. So when we read Wilford Woodruff quoting Joseph Smith, and Joseph Smith saying the Son of Man will come to them while in the Rocky Mountains, I can only assume that as we watch the Salt Lake Temple, going under this this renovation process where they're doing not just the temple but the entire thing. I mean, for heaven's sake, they took down the visitor centers, and I loved those visitor centers. I didn't see anything wrong with them. You know, there's a lot of nostalgia for me in those visitor centers, but they're redoing all of it, and not just. Okay, let's look at it again. Okay, Salt Lake Temple. Let's look at it on a map. Okay, go to satellite view. So they're not only doing what's traditionally thought of as Temple Square right here, which was this city block, but they're also doing the other side over here, and they're wanting it to be all integrated. It's a major undertaking, right? And a lot of what's woken a lot of us up is the eclipse, right? That was like one of the big things that happened in 2017 that really I think woke a lot of people up. Between that and everything that happened in 2020, a lot of people got the alert, I guess, in their brains, in their spirits, that something's happening, that the second coming is approaching. And so it would make sense that the Salt Lake Temple, which according to KSL, Grant, I know that you're listening to this. Grant is all about temple details and stuff. KSL recently reported that they're still looking at 2024. Grant said no, the KSL person got it wrong, which I don't know. I'm not going to go into it that far, but it was a pretty recent report. And I don't know, that date could just keep shifting and floating back and forth for all I know. But whatever the case, we know that we have that eclipse coming up in 2024. Okay. And that's about the same time that this is going to be done, the Salt Lake Temple. The interesting thing about that eclipse, a lot of you already know. Let's see, 2024 U.S. solar eclipse. It's going to be on Monday, April 8th, and that's going to be the day after General Conference is done. These two eclipses are very LDS oriented. If you're new to the channel, between the two eclipses, they go over major church locations and sites, like Kirtland, Ohio, right? The first temple of this dispensation. It goes over Palmyra. I'm talking about the one in 2024. And then a lot of the church sites, just a lot of the church sites in New York and then Ohio and so on. The one in 2017, it covered all the Missouri sites, all the way north from Adamon all the way south to Independence, Missouri. And like I've said before, if it had deviated just a few miles, the path of totality would not have covered those church sites. These eclipses are very, very LDS. They're very specific to our church. And the one that happened in 2017, again, that was the last year of President Monson's life. He passed away within the first few days of 2018, right? So that's why I think a lot of people are looking at the Salt Lake Temple and kind of feeling like Christ won't come until this is done. And that could be. Yeah, maybe that's how it's going to go. Maybe not. Maybe the plan is for this to be kind of a false security to really catch us off guard, especially those that aren't watching. I don't really know. It would make complete sense either way to me if he came before or after it was done. It may be that maybe he'll come just as soon as the earthquake upgrading is done, but not the rest of the temple. That could happen too. Anyway, going back to this conference report and what Wilford Woodruff is saying, okay, he's saying that the Son of Man will come to them while in the Rocky Mountains. Now, okay, so that's the most obvious understanding of this. It's his appearance in New Jerusalem, not calling Salt Lake the center place, but the New Jerusalem as the church and the church headquarters in Salt Lake City currently. Or, he could be referring to the time that Christ appeared to Lorenzo Snow in the Salt Lake Temple. Christ has appeared in the Rocky Mountains. We have one account where that took place, where he appeared to Lorenzo Snow. But I don't tend to think that that's what Joseph Smith is referring to here. But it could be. I don't know. Let me finish off his talk here. There's just a little bit left. I name these things because I want to bear testimony before God, angels, and men, that mine eyes behold the day, and have beheld for the last 50 years of my life the fulfillment of that prophecy. I never expected to see the Rocky Mountains when I listened to that man's voice, but I have, and I do today. I will say here that I shall not live to see it, but you may not live to see it. But these thousands of Latter-day Saint children that belong to the Sabbath schools, I believe many of them will stand in the flesh when the Lord Jesus Christ visits the Zion of God here in the mountains of Israel. So, okay, so here I guess he kind of clarifies. It seems like he's thinking, the appearance of Christ in the lead up to the second coming. It just makes sense to me, you guys. It makes sense that okay, if we're talking about one appearance of Jesus Christ to New Jerusalem, I feel like it would make sense that he would go to the headquarters of the church, which is currently Salt Lake City, and appear at the Salt Lake Temple. Okay, we've talked about the changes to the temple, and the more I read the comments, I feel like maybe that's not Christ coming to his temple or coming to visit New Jerusalem, but it could be. It could be. Maybe just more Christ in the temple fulfills that. But um, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so anyway, the way that he's talking here makes it seem like a single visit. Okay. Okay, so I believe many of them, and I'll have to add this to my generational quotes. I let's see, timeline. I think it's under Rising Generation where I have all these different quotes. Yeah, I'm gonna have to add this one on there too. That's a new quote. Gosh, I have a lot of stuff I need to add to my. I've been sick, so I haven't like done the typical amount of work. But there's like a bunch of quotes that I've covered over the last few videos that I need to add to my spreadsheets. If you're new, you can access my spreadsheet anytime. The link for it is in the description below. It'll take you here because it's in the cloud. And then just make sure to check out all the different tabs. You can click on the 4 bars right here, and then check out the different tabs. So anyway, all right. So let's continue. And while I bear witness before God, angels, and men, that mine eyes behold the fulfillment of the revelation given that night, I just as much believe that the remaining part of it will be fulfilled as I stand here in the flesh. I rejoice at seeing the progress of the work that lies before us. There's a great work before this people in the fulfillment of these prophecies that have been given. Joseph Smith was full of revelation. He foresaw this people and this work until it was wound up. My prayer to God is that we may pursue such a course, that we may enjoy and receive all these blessings and our posterity after us. Amen. So that's really, 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 really neat. That is really, really neat. And I think that solidifies what I already kind of suspected. For me, my best guess, and I don't really like, setting the future in stone, but my best guess is that Christ will have a single appearance in the New Jerusalem, and that by what we just read right here, and what we've read is the definition of New Jerusalem, that he will come to Salt Lake City, he'll come to the Salt Lake Temple, you know, um, do whatever it is that he's going to do there, and then after that, go to, however long afterwards, I don't know, go to Jerusalem and save the Jews. Okay, so, and by the way, based on recent videos, I have reason to believe that we will be translated, caught up, and come down with him to the Jews. So that's the best that I know. That's the best that I know. Okay, now I wanted to talk a little bit about Melchizedek's Temple. I did a video about this a few days ago. This is something that I guess has been uncovered since 2010. I don't think it's very well known. Some of you already knew about it. You've known about it for a while, but it was new to me. They found what they believe is Melchizedek's Temple. Okay. You have an altar right here. This is an artist depiction, of course. In fact, let me look at the better. Okay. So it's very simple. It's very small. He had an altar for sacrifice, and then in here they had oh gosh, I already forgot what they were calling it. A Matzevah. I think it was a Matzevah, or basically an altar like what you'd find in our temples where you kneel down. Uh, it's not so much for sacrificing animals, but like a kneel down pillar altar. Um, Although this one would be kind of rough on your knees because it's stone. It's stone, and the top part is it's a thin stone, so it probably wouldn't be very comfortable for like leaning on. But it's that type of altar. Um, And then you have these other rooms, like this one, they believe was for making oil, right, for temple service, olive oil. And then this one over here, they don't really know. They don't really know, but they think that it's for pressing grain, okay, and also for skinning of animals. You have these really interesting looking marks in at the bottom, okay, and I came across a video. Excuse me. This is part one, and this no, got it all mixed up. This is part one. Okay, so here's a better look at it, and then here's part two. And this is the guy. This is like the main archaeologist that discovered this. Shukron is his name, and so he's saying that um, what he thinks is that this would have been used for like a stand so that you could like hang animals right here and skin them, right? And so by having these depressions in the rocks, it would help like keep it steady, which that could be, that could be, and that doesn't take away from what these could potentially mean. If it was used for that, great. It could still whatever. For me, it doesn't really matter what they were used for. It's just the fact that they're there. And so here's part two. And right here, he's confident. Like what they found out about this temple is it was carefully and purposely preserved at a time when King Hezekiah was like taking down these like pagan places of worship and stuff like that. Um, they decided to close this down, but they treated it as the house of God. It's just that now at that point they had the temple built up, the main temple on Mount Moriah, Mount Zion, whatever. And so now that they had that temple, they didn't need this anymore. And so they carefully um, they covered it up, but they didn't take it down. They didn't destroy it because, and that's what he's saying right here. He says, because this is the house of God, and you cannot destroy the house of God. I would encourage you to check this out. This is basically just a tour that he's giving. This is from 4 years ago. Um, but it got me to thinking. We've thought about how's this temple going to take place in Jerusalem? Is it going to be the third temple that the Jews are trying to build? Is it the BYU Jerusalem Center? Um, Even though it wasn't officially built to be that, and whatever, the Lord could do whatever He wants to, and He could turn it into a temple. And I have to stress, the church will not go against the Israeli government. They won't break the laws. They're not just going to like do that. Okay, they're not going to do things that they shouldn't do. But the Lord could do it in His own timing, in His own way, or provide the way for that building to become a temple. Now, another possibility, a third option in my mind, is what if this could be the temple? Not maybe for good, but to fulfill that prophecy. Just like how if the Salt Lake Temple is not going to be the center place once New Jerusalem is built up, the center place of New Jerusalem is, if the Salt Lake Temple could be used, why couldn't this temple? This is a temple, okay? If this is right, if this really is Melchizedek's temple, this is a temple, and it's been preserved through time. Take a look at this. This is on the melchizedekpriesthood.com. Here's the pillar I was talking about, the altar. You can see that it's kind of not so great for putting your arms across, but anyway, there's that. Here's a bird's eye view. Again, this is like where sorry, this is where the other altar would be for burning the sacrifices, and there's some like storage rooms and drainage channels for blood and oil and wine and whatever. And then they're calling this over here grain press, probably because of this um, circular depression. Although this guy, he was saying that these would be for hanging the animals up while they skin them. So I don't know. But anyway, what if this could serve as that temple. It was at one time. It was at one time. And it's still here. Hasn't been destroyed. It's a temple. There's currently a temple. There is currently a temple. The temple that Melchizedek used in Jerusalem right now. The original Jerusalem. The city of David. Okay? Because the city of David, this little thing right here, these like couple streets, I think it's basically, it goes along, let me see if I can find a, okay. I don't think it would be city limits because I don't think it's currently like a incorporated city. I'll just do border of city of David. Images. Useless. Well, there's kind of like a thing here. Yeah, you see this right here? It's just like it's a nothing. It's so tiny. Let's go to this website. Look, this is what it would have looked like. The city of David. It's just like it's just teeny tiny. This is what Jerusalem was. And this is where that temple is currently. So the temple is it's actually kind of hard to tell, but I think it's basically right here. City of David tours and ancient Jerusalem in tunnels, because it's basically underground, but it's like somewhere around here is my understanding. So at the time of David and at the beginning of Jerusalem, at the time of Melchizedek, this is essentially what Jerusalem was, right? And the temple would have been here. And then later on, Solomon's temple was built up here, and then that was destroyed by the Babylonians. And then afterwards, you had the second temple, the Temple of Zerubbabel, which later was renovated by Herod, becoming unofficially the Herodian temple, or the second temple up here. But before that, this. And it's amazing to think. I can't remember exactly the the number of years that they think that temple was up, but it was more time that it was like in existence than the first and second temples combined, going all the way back to the time of Melchizedek. And they talked about how there was like a website that I was going through that was talking about how I think it was Solomon when he was anointed or whatever. It was down here in the city of Enoch, or the city. Oh my gosh, the city of David. And there was a priest named Zadok that did it, and most likely it was done here, but where the temple was, Melchizedek's temple. Even though there's not a lot of like reference to it in the scriptures, but we as Latter-day Saints, we know how important temples are. We know that it's been important since the time of Adam and Eve, right? We know that Enoch had a city. Undoubtedly, there was a temple there. When Lehi and his family were broken off and taken to the Americas, they built temples there. They were Old Testament people. There were temples. There were temples all over. The ark that saved Noah and his family was designed after the temple, after the tabernacle and the temple. So it really shouldn't surprise us that there would be a temple of Melchizedek right where Melchizedek was in Salem, right? Because before it was the city of David, before it was Jerusalem, it was Salem. And so, yeah. So could it be that, hey, there's a city there right now and Christ can appear to that temple? Which would be very fitting because this is the original temple in this area, the first. Well, I don't know. Whenever we read, and I don't have any quotes up, unfortunately, with me right now, but I recall, I think it was Wilford Woodruff, when he was talking to one of the Rothschilds. He was talking about, hey, you need to, go to your land and you need to build up your temple and rebuild Jerusalem. So, and I think there were other things like that said. So it may be that they're talking about building the third temple. I don't know. But here is another option, maybe something that nobody really considered or knew, but here's a possibility. The only thing about it is that it's currently underground, but what if it's, well, I guess it would be a problem if it's underneath all these, like, houses and stuff, but I don't know. It's just something else to think about. So, yeah, I have these websites pulled up. I'll put them in the description below if you want to go learn more. I would definitely watch these two videos. Like I said, it's basically a part 1 and part 2. Or you can just look him look him up. Eli Shukron. Right here, that we covered this, the pool of Siloam, and why that's important and how that's viewed as necessary for the third temple. Anyway, he says, I found the pool of Siloam, so I guess he did that too. Here's an interview that he's doing with some Christian guy. Okay. I think that's pretty much it. So, anyway, I just thought I would bring that to you. So it would seem, like I said, that Christ will appear to the saints in the Rocky Mountains, most likely to the Salt Lake Temple, and that's most likely why the temple is being renovated. It's not too far a stretch of the imagination, but at some point, I do think that the center place, New Jerusalem, will be built. Why? Not just because of what the church website says, but because of what we know about the Independence LDS Visitor Center. This was built to be a temple and to be part of the 24 temple complex. This building was built to the specifications revealed to Joseph Smith, and we've gone over those specifications. It's in the Joseph Smith papers. Okay. There were names for the different temples. We've covered that in a previous video. And Alvin R. Dyer, in working alongside the architect in consulting with President David O. McKay, they determined which of those temples this would be and built it accordingly. Two floors. Okay, I can't remember the dimensions. It's something like 65 feet by 81 feet or something, but the dimensions that were revealed to Joseph Smith, and they built it to be a temple. So that's why I think that, yeah, there's still, that's still the plan, is to build that temple complex. And then we've covered different stories where there were offers on this land over here, where the first temple would have been built of the 24 temple complex. As recently as 2018, there was an offer made on this land. And the guy alluded to it being the church, basically offering a blank check. And this is still significant. This is not history. So, but things, I think a lot of times they kind of play out gradually and just through the natural course of things, but directed by the Lord. But still not just like abrupt and supernatural and crazy. It can sometimes, but not typically. So, okay, yeah. All right. That's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.